Last night, the Overwatch balance team or dev team did a little dev blog where they talked about the changes coming in season 17. Now, there's a bunch of minor changes coming to the roster. One of them, they've already shared that Junker Queen is basically getting a priority to prioritize overhealth onto her teammates. So I don't know if that means that when she uses her commanding shout, she's going to give her allies more overhealth. I don't know if we need mini tank Genjis, Tracers, Swords, and Freyas running around in the game. I don't know if that's a healthy direction or not, but I'm willing to wait it out and see what they do with her. Although, if I'm gonna give my personal opinion, Jungle Queen is not actually bad. Queen's problem is that she just sucks against the current state of armor, and honestly, armor is gonna be a big talking point because the current state of armor is actually what's causing a lot of problems in the game, and this is gonna lead into the big topic for today. But before I get to that big topic, I'm just gonna address some of the other things that the team basically talked about. They want to help Bastion, and this one's got the community a little bit divided. I'm also very divided on this change because I try to look at these things from both a high elo and a low elo perspective. As you guys know, Bastion is a very popular character in low elo. He's like one of the first DPSs that people pick up simply because he's a skill floor based character. He's a very gimmicky character that goes into the turret form, and then he starts to mow people down, etc., etc. And he's almost always been built around that gimmick. And in hero shooters, as much as I hate to say it, characters that will always be built around their gimmick will be defined by their gimmick, and unless you giga buff the gimmick, there's just nothing you can do to make them quote unquote like viable at all stages of play. And if you want to make them viable at all stages of play, you're going to end up in a scenario where the character will just lose their unique gimmick and they're going to become a homogenized character like everybody else that does work in the game. So when it comes down to situations like this, you have to pick your poison. Do you want your unique gimmick character to not be unique, or do you want the character to fit in the gimmick and work over there? Now, when it comes to the Bastion changes, what they've basically done is his hero model will be shrunk by 10%. On your screen right now, you'll see like a before and after. Now, I'm not against this change. On my first glance, I'm not a fan of it because my problem when approaching skill floor heroes like this is not going to bother me personally. There's like whenever I play against Sebastian, I know there's like a bazillion heroes and a bazillion ways I can approach the character and make him explode, and the people I play with feel the same way. This does not bother us, right? But I do understand there might be a scenario where in low elo this character becomes more popular and he begins to destroy the game more over there, and that leads into perhaps unnecessary changes for Bastion, where he might see changes that he doesn't necessarily need because they gave him the smaller model. For those that want a little bit more context as to why I believe this could end up happening, is there was a time where when Goats was running dominant over the game, they giga buffed Reaper out of nowhere, and this is not the same level, by the way. I'm just saying that this is something that could happen. They giga buffed Reaper in a way where they gave him more damage, thinking Reaper could just melt Goats, but in reality he was redundant in highest levels of play, and at the lowest levels of play, Reaper was an absolute monster. Now, I'm not saying Bastion could just go and become server admin at lowest levels of play, but with how bad people's aim is and things like that, you never know. And the thing is like the reason I'm cautious with changes like this is I'm always scared with the compensation changes that come later, because usually a change like this they're going to commit. Now, what is my general opinion on this Bastion change? I'm okay with it. I think it's nice to have. I personally would have changed Bastion in different ways in order to help him with his current problems. But just like in my opinion, like this is nice to have. It doesn't solve the problems. So I hope it really helps him, because if this doesn't help him, it can either go two ways. Again, like he can become a low elo monster where somehow he actually just becomes like hard meta in low elo. I do know he still gets played very well in the low metal ranks like gold, silver, and bronze, right? He kind of drops off in plat and all that, but in at least anything in like low gold and below, he's still very, very popular. But that's just my take on it. It's like, sure, I welcome this change, but I think we have to be a little bit more careful with him. So I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay with it, but it's like I really hope Blizzard try to approach this kid in a different way. I might dedicate a video to Bastion in these coming next few days. But anyways, moving on. So we talked about Junker Queen, we talked about Bastion. Now we need to talk about the big ones. Okay, obviously you guys have seen it in the title and everything. So let's start talking about it. And that is that we are getting a role passive change. We're getting it to the global healing. So the global healing passive will be changed. where basically the self-healing wait timer is being extended from 5 to 6 seconds. Honestly, this really hurts the DPS role more than it does anything for the tank and supports. And then the damage roll passive will now have its heal reduction increased up to 30%, up from 25%. So for context purposes, when the damage roll passive first came out, it started at 20%, it got hotfixed into 15%, it then dropped down to 10%, we then brought it back to 20%, and then it went up to 25%, and now it is sitting at 30%. So this is ridiculous, right? And I have so much stuff I want to basically say about this. Is what is the aim over here? I've read through their dev blog, and nothing in that can justify the like making healing feeling this garbage. To be honest with you guys, in my personal opinion, I think 25% was perfect. I don't think they need to push it to 30%, but basically what they're understanding with the current state of the game is there is a small sustain creep that's happening, and there are certain, you know, characters or whatever that are becoming harder to kill, so they want to find a way to allow the DPS that are not part of the meta. Let's say you know, Sojourn and Freya are currently the only characters that can really deal with the current state of the sustain in the game. They're hoping that this healing reduction allows other DPS picks to really thrive as well. Now my problem is that while, you know, perhaps the idea behind this is a good thing, it might just end up making Sojourn and Freya even more oppressive because of their already incredible damage numbers. And then number two, another problem I have with this is that it's going to make the heal bot supports that finally found their places in the game, characters like Moira and 𝐓𝐈𝐈, and arguably like Mercy's heal bot playstyle, it's just going to make them, okay, I'll outright say it, like it's just going to kill the characters, guys. Like they're going to be super lost in this mix again. And with this balance patch, we're just getting quote-unquote apparently minor changes. So if there's going to be no major changes happening with this balance patch, it's going to be a very awkward time to be a support player. Now look guys, I try to be fair to all roles, okay? And the way I basically see it, the sustain problem is actually more on tanks than it is on DPS and support right now, outside of maybe like a few DPS that could use like 1 or 2 damage number changes or some quality of life changes that we've talked about before. But the state of armor is currently what's allowing tanks to be so good at sustaining themselves. And what I don't understand is why don't they address the state of armor? Because it's like I talked about in my video of getting to top 500, I outright stated that the game is just coming down to who has the better tank, who can sustain their tank, who can allow their tank to become server admin. And at least in my opinion, I feel like this change is supposed to hurt the way healing is interacting with tanks. Because if you're a squishy and you get the healing passive, reduction passive on you, you're gonna blow up anyway. So in my opinion, this doesn't change it that much for a squishy. It's definitely gonna feel horrible. It's gonna feel horrible for characters like Zenyatta and Lucio who already do like really low healing numbers. But it's gonna feel terrible on characters like Mercy Weaver and all those guys too. But like the stronger meta support lines, you know, I don't know how they're gonna feel this. But I'm already seeing a lot of negative sentiment, and like I said, I want to try and be fair to all roles. I'm not here trying to make like a us versus them. I'm not here, whenever I try to talk about the state of the game, I'm never ever trying to push it from this perspective that, no, I just need DPS to be good, or I don't want tank or supposed to be good. No. We try to bring all three in a position where they're relative to one another and, you know, they're not like over exceeding one another. Now, my last commentary on this before I end the video is, if Blizzard thinks that support sustain generally, like, and for some reason not tanks, if support sustain is actually strong and they want to deal with it, why don't they individually deal with the supports that are sticking out like sore thumbs? You're basically like doing a band-aid fix that might end up hurting other characters that don't need it, and then it might lead into balance changes that are also not necessary. Somehow Mercy might go up to 70 healing per second. Is that something we really want in the game? Moira might see gigabuffs out of nowhere. Like characters that will fall off, like these are the characters we expect to fall off with a 30% healing reduction. Like it's gonna hurt them the most, right? Now, obviously, this is going to encourage supports to start DPSing a lot more, people to use natural cover even more, and it just leads into my philosophy that I basically said about 5v5, where 5v5 is literally just a team deathmatch simulator. There's no real proper strategical depth to it unless you play at the super highest levels of play where every micro play matters, but even then it can sometimes boil down to which team has the better hit scan Sojourn player popping the F off with a supporting Freya or whatever the case might be. But so if they're looking at it from the support side of view, I just just think there's better ways to handle it. And then number two, on the flip side, assuming that they wanted this healing reduction change to actually affect the way tank sustain works in the game, then my only question is, why don't you address the state of armor? Because armor right now has screwed over breakpoints in the game like crazy, and it's working really weirdly with the way certain characters, like for example Genji and Hanzo, interact with the breakpoints very differently than characters like Pharah and Junkrat. So I don't understand why we don't just address the state of tanks and armor if they're the ones that are benefiting from being able to just constantly stay alive. My problem with this as well is that if this patch ends up backfiring, what happens from here is we will end up getting unnecessary balance change after unnecessary balance change after unnecessary balance change. Because this is something that I've also said before on my live streams and my videos, as I've said, guys, if we somehow end up on a good patch, the game begins to do these like completely unnecessary experimental changes that feel like it's changes for the sake of changes and not actually for the sake of addressing some of the problems in the game. So like I said, the Bastion change, I'm okay with it. I'm a fan of it. I don't fully think that it's going to solve its problems, and it might cause different issues, but it's the same thing that's going on with the heal reduction passive, where it's like, I think 25% was fine. It was more than enough. And again, tanks are the ones that benefit from being able to stay alive because of their base kits and the state of armor. Why don't we look at that instead of trying to tiptoe around it again with, okay, well, if tanks are still so good at staying alive, let's just have the DPS passive do even more. I don't know. It's a really awkward state. I will finally say that I think this is gonna help Tracer a lot, because Tracer is a character that's been very awkward in the state of if she's meta or not. Again, characters like Tracer, breakpoints matter a lot for them, and that's why I've always been somebody who pushes for breakpoints more than just making these like band-aid fixes. I'm willing to see how things go, and I'll definitely come back, and maybe my opinion changes when I play with it. Maybe my opinion will be different with the patch that comes with it. We will review all of that. So just take this video with a little small grain of salt. I'm open to having my mind changed, but upon first glance, I think this is a call for concern that I don't agree with this direction for the game. I don't think this is the way you handle the game's current problems, especially if you're aiming at 5v5. And by the way, for those of you that that think this is going to be good for, like, you know, for 5v5, it's going to be horrible for 6v6 because tanks don't have that same type of sustain. So this is a huge nerf to the way healing and tanks will work in 6v6, and God knows how it's gonna pan out in 5v5 with all the passives and shit over there. So that's going to be it for this video, everybody. With that being said, I will see you in the next one.